Good morning. Good morning, members. Good morning and welcome to members of the public. I do apologise for the late start. We've had a difficulty with one of our public speakers trying to join. We're trying to sort this out while we're doing the formalities because she wants to take part in the first application. So we're attempting to solve that problem. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee of Babergh District Council, the 24th of March 2021. May I first of all remind you of some of the domestic arrangements. Please ensure that the microphones and cameras are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you wish to speak, point of order, declare and interest or request an adjournment, please use the hands up function on the taskbar. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open, i.e. other teams chats or the emojis. Use the emojis and that if you are contacted by a third party during an application, you should bring this to the legal advisor's attention. And that if you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. If members do lose connection to the meeting, they must contact the member support officer, Mandy Smith, as soon as possible. You all have that telephone number. We will be using modern.gov to conduct all electronic votes during the meeting. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The council, members of the public and press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. I'd like to introduce you to the team today. Mark Russell, Area Planning Manager, Jamie Wynard, Case Officer, Jeremy Martin Edwards, Case Officer, Ian DeProse, Planning Lawyer, and Robert Carmichael, Governance Officer. I'd now like to move to the agenda. Item number 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any? I think we're all present.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have any apologies for this morning's meeting.
Good. Item number 2, to the declarations of interest. Are there any to declare, members? Councillor Owen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to close a local non-pecuniary...
can you put your camera on, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry there, is that all right? Oh. It's gone on, yeah. Yep. I would like to close a local non-pecuniary interest in the Acton item as I'm known to the applicant. However, there is no influence from the relationship. I'll remain the debate and take part in the vote. Thank you.
Councillor Ayres.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I have known the applicants for about 15 years, mainly through civic things and the town twinning, but they're not known to me as a particular friend, but I do know them, so I do declare non-pecuniary interest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll ask our legal officer to comment.
Indeed. Good morning, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Just to confirm, both councillors took my advice before the start of the meeting, and I can confirm that, in my opinion, those interests have been declared properly as local non-pecuniary. Then, in neither case are they anything close to a pecuniary interest, and it does not appear to me that there's any inference to be drawn of bias or predetermination or an interest leading to such.
Thank you. So no other interest being declared. We'll move on to item number 3 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March. You'd all been sent an electronic copy of these. There's 13 pages, quite a lot to go through. Is there any comments or points of accuracy, please? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ayres, your hand is up. Councillor Ayres? Is that an old hand?
No, sorry, Chair. It's just to say I have read them and I will propose that we accept them. Thank you.
Oh, you're proposing them, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Right, there's no other comments, so I'll take that proposal and seconder. We need to go to electronic vote. Is that correct, Mandy?
Sadly, Chair, you've got me today, not Mandy, for the electronic vote. But
You'll make up your mind. You told me it was Mandy earlier.
no, Mandy's doing the live stream this morning, Chair, and I'll be doing all the electronic votes. So,
Right.
With your permission, Chair, I will start the electronic vote for this morning.
And let's go in.
So, if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to the plus sign in the top right hand corner of today's agenda and click on the subsection for voting/attendance. The vote will appear in a light blue colour under PL20/11, and it will be, apologies, I'm having to just get to the right point, and it will appear in a light blue colour when the vote is live. The vote should now be live, Chair.
Ah, yes, there it is. Right, hit that one. Right, have we all voted?
Yep, that's everyone, Chair, and that's a unanimous vote in favour of approving the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
And now we close it and go back to the symbol, don't we? Close.
Yes, Chair.
Modern Gov. That's the bit to remember. Thank you very much for that. Right, then we'll move on to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme. I think you have one to explain to us, Robert.
Thank you, Chair. So we have one petition to report to the meeting this morning regarding the first application on the agenda of DC 20-05361. I'll read out the statements regarding that point and the number of total valid signatories. So we, the undersigned, petition the Council to decline the planning application DC 20-05361, land southeast of Barrow Hill, Acton, CO10 0AS. There is extensive and reasoned local objection to this application, the extent of which is not necessarily apparent from the number of objections showing on the planning site. This has been signed in total by 1,570 people and was validated this morning at a final total of 1,211 after 359 signatures were rejected under the petition scheme rules. So just to confirm, the total of number of signatures is 1,211. This won't show on the website as of yet, as I hope members can appreciate this was validated only this morning and we haven't had time to update the website for that fact yet. So if there's any points on that, Chair, I'll leave it there.
Can I ask the 359, I think it was, rejected ones, the reasons, or without going into too much detail, but
I think the main reason, Chair, and we're communicating this to the lead petitioner as well, is the fact that they were not in the district. So under the Babergh petition rules, if I just get the right part in front of me here, so that I can be clear to members about what we are talking about. So the petition scheme requires that any person who lives, works or studies can sign the petition area, but the petition submitted must include the following detail: the name, address or place of work or study of any person supporting the petition, And supporters of the petitioner can be anyone who lives, works or studies in the area of the district council. So anywhere outside of Babergh where they have given an address and not indicated that they live, work or study in Babergh have to be discounted under the scheme.
Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you. Right, so that's the only petition you've received.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is site inspections. Officers, are there any site inspection requests? I take that as no.
No.
Mark?
None, Chair. No.
Thank you. Members, are there any site inspection requests? And I see no hands going up, so there's none there. Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 6, which is scheduled plan and applications. And 6A is land at south east of Babergh Hill, Acton. I now invite Case Officer Jamie Martin Edwards to introduce the application to the committee. Good morning, Jamie. Looking very smart. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, members. I have got the presentation on screen, so if we can just check that everyone can see that.
Yes, sorry, yes.
And you can all hear me loud and clear, yep?
Yep.
Excellent stuff. But if I just start the presentation. Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much. So I'll be presenting this morning the application for land south east of Babergh Hill in Acton. By way of an introduction, this is an outline consent for up to 100 dwellings. This includes play space, land for a scout hut and a nature area. Those three will be captured by Section 106, and the application does consider access as well. That means that appearance, scale, landscaping and layout are all matters that are reserved. Also, to make members aware that there is an extant outline permission on this site back from 2017. Currently, the outline permission has until the 1st of May 2021 for the reserved matters to be submitted. Those reserved matters could be submitted on the 1st of May and we would need to determine those. So briefly showing the site in situ, I'll go into a lot wider detail in a second, but just to show that we have site outlined here, and this is where the proposed access will go. Again, I'll be going in a lot more finer detail in a second regarding that. So just going out wider, just to show where Acton sits and resides within the functional cluster. We have Sudbury here, Long Melford over to the west, Great Waldingfield to the east, Little Waldingfield here with Acton in the middle. Obviously the Chiltern Woods development that's going in the north here. And I've also just outlined where the site sits in the red line. So just going in a little bit closer, and Chair, just to check that my slides are running in time. I do know sometimes they delayed. All captured up in time, yeah?
Slide 5 at the moment.
Brilliant stuff. Okay. So the site is outlined in red here. We do have the access as well that will come here. I haven't shown that on this slide. I've also just noted here the Tamage Road site in Acton, where development was granted after the 2017 permission was granted, outline permission here, but as subsequently works have been commenced on this site already. I've also just highlighted that we've got the primary school kind of in the centre of Acton, set behind the houses on High Street. We've also got the village hall just up here, the church, public house is just located here, and a convenience shop with bus stops along High Street here. So just zooming in a little bit further, and again, just to get our directions sorted, we've got Babergh Hill, which runs in a northeasterly direction behind the site. We have the High Street that runs along here, and that turns into Waldingfield Street down on the southeast. We have the convenience stores just inside here, you can just note there. Also points to remember is we've got the community woodland just north of the site, which separates from Babergh Hill, and we have the allotment section here. We also have public footpath 9, which runs on the east side of the allotments, down the eastern side of the site, inside the boundary line. And then it comes into this cluster of trees here and breaks out into High Street here. You'll note that there is also some other walkways that you can see on the map. These aren't necessarily a public right of way, but are used locally. And indeed, when I did my site visit, I walked around this whole site, keeping to those paths. So again, just another outline, just to show it in a little bit more detail in terms of a block plan. And again, you can see the public right of way footpath 9 there. And you also notice now that we've got the access shown as well in red that joins onto High Street. And that is within the curtilage of a single dwelling here, which will need to be demolished. In terms of a constraints map, we have the built up settlement boundary area shown in kind of a maroon colour. You'll notice it attaches onto the western boundary of the site. The site is separated from the settlement boundary to the north by that community woodland, and to the south it's only separated by the settlement boundary by the rear gardens of dwellings that face High Street. Also, very important points here for consideration, members, is that we have Marigold, and if I just zoom in a little bit, might be able to see that a little bit better. So we've got Marigold there, is a grade 2 listed building directly opposite the access. And hopefully I'm pronouncing this one right, is Speed Dives, I understand. Another grade 2 listed building. We have a single grade 2 listed building that's been subdivided into 2 dwellings known as Lilac Cottage and Sunflower Cottage here. We also have Pool House, grade 2 listed building located here. If I just zoom back out again, we've got a cluster of grade 2 listed buildings over to the west, and another one here. And we also have the grade 1 listed church in the northwest area. So point out, this is where our heritage team have identified that harm would take place with having the access directly opposite the listed building. At current, our heritage team are only seeing this as less than substantial harm. We have inquired with them in terms of what the impact of having this field developed into housing would have. At this stage, that they have no concerns, and more detail would come forward as part of the reserve matters. However, together we have acknowledged that we are looking at a less than substantial harm in terms of the listed buildings by developing this site, of which we obviously give great weight as per the MPPF requirements in the decision making. And it's also set out in the report. So just to go into the details of the access. So we can see here, this is the existing dwelling that will be demolished to allow for the access to come into place. High Street that runs along here currently has a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in place. If I just zoom in a little bit, the blue dotted line you should be able to see denotes the visibility splays, and we can see that we've got 62.5 meters either way on the visibility splays. And you'll also notice some of the objections that we've received say that this visibility splay crosses third-party land. We can see here quite clearly that it goes right up to but does not cross third-party land. It always stays in highways ownership, so there's no concerns that the highway would be, or the visibility displays would be impeded in this instance. And I think also a point to note in terms of some of the objections that we've received, we see up here that the footpath alongside the access into the site has been denoted as being 2 meters wide. We expect that would take place. There is no additional annotation for the footpath width in this area, and it would be logic to assume that the 2 meters means it's for the whole footpath. It doesn't. I've measured this on a scaled on the scale drawing. This is less than 2 meters here, as set out in the report. There will be a widening of the footpath here, which I'll come on to in a little while. There has been a speed survey that's taken place on the high street, and this has seen a sort of average speed of around about 38 miles per hour. This would mean that we'd have enlarged visibility displays to the normal that we would expect in terms of a 30-mile-an-hour zone. The 62 meters doesn't quite match what we would expect in that instance, but we also have a suite of improvements to the road in terms of speed reductions, and that has satisfied our highways colleagues, and these will be captured as part of a Section 278 agreement. I understand that conversations and discussions had been ongoing with the Highways Department as part of the extant permission already. And I think what is also important to note here is that this access committee has already approved under the extant permission in the 2017. And this particular drawing has also been discharged under that extant permission with Suffolk Highways approval to say that this is an acceptable access. So we have technically accepted this as an access twice over already. So I'm just going to move on to, if I just zoom out a little bit, it should let me. There we go. Into some of the proposed speed reduction measures. I think it's really clear to add to members here that this is not going to be controlled at this stage as an approved document. There is a condition that the Section 278 will need to come forward as part of the highway agreements, but this is just indicatively showing what could come forward. And like I say, these conversations are ongoing with our Suffolk Highways teams at the moment. So we potentially will see a drop-down curb and tactile paving opposite a footpath that runs to the primary school. So anyone that occupies the site of development will be able to use the path all the way around and then cross the road at the drop-down curve area, tactile crossing point. We also have edge of carriageway markings that will be going in approximately here in terms of notifying that we've got a reduction in speed of the carriageway. And this is the area that we'll be looking to see the footpath widened, and as a result that will see a reduction in the road width, but no less than 5.5 metres, which still meets highway standards that Suffolk Highways are happy with. And again, just some more of the suite a little bit further out in terms of the improvements, some further road markings to denote the 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. And we'll also, as you can see here, this is the type of thing that we might envision here. Again, these are to be agreed with Suffolk Highways under the Section 278. So I'm just going to go back to where the access is going to come in. This is where the access will be. This is the house that's to be demolished. These green rings that have been highlighted here are TPO trees with protection orders on, as well with this one. This tree within the access area is not to be removed. This is taken from the tree report that was submitted as part of the application. You can see that all trees with a green solid ring round them are to be retained. All trees with a green dotted line will be removed. So you can notice that there's a tree here on the entrance that will be retained. It's just outside of the red line plan, as well with the hedgerow here, but obviously the hedgerow at the front will come out and at the back to be removed. Next slide is more of a concept plan. There's nothing here that we will be conditioning against because that's settled for reserve matters. The applicants have submitted this detail in terms of what could come forward. I don't think there's anything here that we really need to dwell on because we can't expect that they would exactly look like these images reserve matters, but it's just an indication of what could come forward. And again, an idea of a scout hut at the top here. I think, again, really important to note is that the development will not be building the scout hut, but rather gifting the land in terms of to the scouts for them to develop this hut themselves. This is a conceptual layout and drainage plan that was submitted. This was a requirement that was different to the 2017 approved permission. This flood is requested by Floods, apologies, and this basically shows how that the drainage can fit into the site alongside the areas for development. There's a couple of key points that I would like to highlight on here. At the moment, we're only showing a 15-metre buffer on the eastern boundary. As part of some of the ecology requirements, they will need to see a much larger buffer on this edge. So we can anticipate that some of these roads will look slightly different in terms of reserve matters. And you also note in the design section of the report, I've given some pointers to say that we're unlikely to support a design layout in terms of this because it's very rigid, particularly with a road that runs straight through the middle of it. So we can expect that reserve matters will see a slightly different scheme. But I think it's key to note here that they've satisfied the Floods Suffolk Floods Authority in terms of showing how they can actually fit all the drainage system in along with development. So I'm just going to move on to landscaping now. The landscaping was provided visual impact assessment. We can see here that we've got the red line plan for the site. You can see a network of public rights of ways to the north, to the south and to the southeast. In essence, all of this area here is not visible from the site or to the site, should I say. I think the key things that I want to highlight here is footpath 12 and footpath 2. Again, this report shows through photographic evidence that the rest of the footpaths can't see it due to the valleys to the north. So if we start with footpath 12, this photo has been provided, and again I'll just do a little zoom in so you might be able to see it in a little bit more detail. You can just see the tops of the houses there of Barrow Hill. This red line does not denote the height of the development. Again, that's something for reserve matters, and we definitely wouldn't be expecting to see height of that, but that was some concern with objections that had come in, that perhaps this was denoting the height of development. I can assure members that this is not the case. We're looking merely at where the approximate extent of the site in terms of the width, so the boundary lines here is just denoting that. So we're very unlikely to see any landscape impact at all of the site from footpath 12 from the north. And then when we look at footpath 6, a lot more close up. So again, these are the rear of the houses on Barrow Hill. And you're likely to see, this is where the allotments is approximately, you're likely to see some roofscapes come into this space here. So very negligible amount of harm that's taking place in that instance. So what I'm going to do now is just have a look into the site in terms of footpath 9, because this is really where the landscape impact is going to happen, is how footpath 9 is actually experienced. You'll remember I've just got a aerial shot here. This is where this shot was taken from, and footpath 9 runs along here. It's just a very short video to get an understanding of the site. So it should start playing now. As we move across, we can see the rear houses along the high street to the south. Area where the access is going to go in here. Hopefully my cursor's staying up to date with that. We've got Gottsfield close, the bungalows here, and the 2-storey dwellings here. And then the rear of the dwellings on Barrow Hill with the community woodland now coming into shot. And as it pans round facing north, we'll now begin to see the start of the allotments and that kind of open space that I said you might be able to see the roofscapes through from footpath 12, and then footpath 9 that carries on towards the north. So that's where we anticipate that the severe amount of harm will happen from a landscaping point of view. It's how footpath 9 will be experienced. Both our landscape consultant and the report that was submitted set out a set of recommendations for mitigation in terms of buffers and the way that we would expect the reserve matters to come forward. And what we can do in 2017, we condition the report submitted as part of any reserve matters that shows how the design has met those requirements set out by our landscape consultant and their landscape report. So I think that's a really good addition to this permission should we go forward with it. So just in terms of a policy context, we had a look at where the settlement boundary was earlier on in the presentation. Currently that sits outside of the settlement boundary. We do offer less weighting to this due to the inconsistencies with the MPPF as set out in the report. We also highlighted that we've got some areas of harm to listed buildings, which we have attributed great weight to as part of the MPPF and our policy CN06. Moving on to CS11, we have a majority of a positive interaction as set out in the report with CS11, but it's very important to note that we do have a conflict in regards to evidencing local needs. In terms of a housing survey, we definitely have a district need here as approved in 2017. We also have a district need for affordable housing. There's not necessarily a local need that's been identified in this instance, but I think it is key to point out that we do have a majority of a positive interaction with CS11. So CS15, again, a positive interaction when considered against all the criteria that the outline application can engage with, and this is detailed further in the report with each criteria point. And in terms of the access, again, we have Suffolk Highways who have assessed to say that we've got no impact to the public highway in regards to the congestion or safety. And I think this has been reaffirmed, the fact that we've agreed this access once under the outline permission and discharged it under a condition as well already. So in terms of balance, we've got heritage harm on one side. We've also got a loss of grade 3 agricultural land, and we've got a site that's technically outside of the built up area boundary. We do have some severe harm to footpath 9, but this can be mitigated through condition and design, so any moderate harm has been attributed to this, and more detail will come forward as part of the reserve matters in terms of an assessment of how harmful any proposal is on that instance. And then in terms of benefits, we've got additional housing, additional affordable housing, still contributions. We have a low reliance on a motor vehicle here with access into the village to some services and facilities, but we've also got good public transport network that this application will actually contribute an extra £50,000 towards the bus service. We don't have any impact to the wider landscape. And of course, we have a great weight given to the extant permission that's currently in place. I think it's important to say that if this was refused today, we could expect the reserve matters to come in at any point later on this afternoon up until the 1st of May. And housing can still take place on this site as a result of that. And we've obviously got no highway safety issues. I think also a very key point, but very little weight is given to this at this stage. The emerging joint local plan actually puts the site inside the settlement boundary of Acton, albeit that it's not an allocated site in this instance. We can just see the top of Tamage Road that is denoted as being an allocated site. This is because 2017 permission hasn't been captured as part of the emerging local plan. Obviously, we are due to submit this to the examiner shortly, and once that goes into that stage, we'll see that this will take more weight in the future. In terms of conditions, I think, again, another important note here is that we've actually spoken to the applicants and agreed that this new permission would have an 18-month deadline to submit reserve matters against. We'd ordinarily see at least a 2-year one, so we've reduced that to improve the deliverability of the site. And again, the majority of other design considerations, such as plot boundary treatments, hard and soft landscaping, have all been conditioned in this instance to come concurrent with the reserve matters. This will allow us a cohesive approach to design later on. This is something that the 2017 permission didn't do, so we might see scale and layout provided, and then we'd see hard and soft landscaping treatments come later on via condition. Through this one, we're advising that we capture it all at once and make sure that we get a really good proposal come forward at reserve matters, which I think is a good point. I've got some slides to go through in terms of photos. There's quite a few. I'll skim through them. If you keep a note of the slide number and where the photo's been taken from, I can always come back to it, but I will skim through them. There's quite a few, so do let us know. So this is from within Gottsfield, looking over the top of the bungalows. The site's just behind here. We may see some roofscape come into this space here. Looking up to Barrow Hill, and opposite the Acton Wildlife Community woodland, and you can just see the site in the background here. This is the last house on this side of the road. Just stepping inside of the woodland, again, this is a fence line of that house, and you can see the boundary along here. And the site, you'll notice, is higher on the kind of northeastern side and slopes downwards towards the village in this side. Again, some of the footpaths that are currently used inside the site and the bungalows in Gottsfield. And this is looking northwards up to the northeast corner. And again, you can see the topology of the land there is slightly higher. And then this is standing in the northeast corner, looking down at Gottsfield to the south, and then High Street over to Gottsfield was over to the west. This is now looking southwards, apologies. And footpath 9 on the left hand side of the screen here. Footpath 9 leading out of the site to the north, and a bit more central we can see the allotments, and this is where the hedgerow will be removed at the rear of the dwelling that's to be demolished to allow for the access in. You can just see that dwelling there that's to be demolished. Again, a bit closer up. And then this is looking with the access directly to the left here towards Gotfields, and then north towards Barrow Hill. Again, you can see that slope, slight slope, gradual slope up into the northeast corner. This is the footpath 9 going out southwards towards High Street, and then this is the entrance to the footpath looking opposite. This is Sunflower Cottage and Lilac Cottage, the Grade 2 listed building. And then this is looking off to the east with Waldingfield Road, around that bend. And you'll notice this is the existing footpath, which is quite nice and wide already, all the way into the village. As we move along, we can now see the Grade 2 listed building Marigold, which is opposite the site, which will come into here. That's a Grade 2 listed building. And then this is the building to be demolished, and then the evergreen hedgerow at the front that will be removed to allow for the access to come in here. Another shot of the building to be demolished. And then just looking back along High Street, again, the footpath, and then this is where we can expect to see the drop-down curbs to come in place to allow for the access up here into the primary school. This is Poole House, the other Grade 2 listed building. Then have the bus service 753 that's in Acton that leads from to Great Walding Field and then into Sudbury. The convenience store and the bus stop in here. And then just looking back again, convenience store with a crossing to the bus service on the other side of the street with an island in between. And then just a shot looking back up into Barrow Hill. So I skimmed through those quite a lot. So if you want to go back and review any of those, please do let me know. In terms of the recommendation, the application is to be granted subject to the section 106 and the conditions set out in your pages 38 to 40, and also along with some additional conditions set out in your table papers. Thank you very much, Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Martin. That's very full and detailed report. And I'll just check with members if there's any points of clarification. I've got a couple. You did point out in the last pictures, I think, that was a detached house that's been demolished.
That is correct, yes, detached house.
One of the plans, I think it was number 8, sort of show it as though it was semi. But it's not. It's a detached house. That's fine.
I think it has an extension on the side there, which may make it look like a semi-detached.
Very close. Garage, yeah. But it's detached. The second point: has there been any request for a pedestrian crossing or an island crossing at the entrance near to where the public footpath is opposite it? Because school children, has there been any talk of that with Highways at all? Or
no, there's no request from Highways at this stage in regards to that. I haven't been made aware from our colleagues in Suffolk Highways for that.
Right. Okay.
That wasn't something that was gained as part of the 2017 permission either.
Right, so a question can be put to the applicants on that point then.
Agreed.
That's fine. Thank you. And can you just clarify again the point regarding the outline plan permission that runs out very soon, but they have up until the 1st of May where whatever decisions are taken today, they can come in with reserved matters on the existing site. Is that correct? Can you just explain that again?
Yeah, no, that's correct. And very well explained.
Clear.
I think it's key that to sort of to go into a lot more detail, which is set out into the report. The permission actually lapsed in early December 2020, but obviously to do with the COVID Act that we currently have in place, that has been extended automatically with no further details required from the applicants up until the 1st of May. So again, we could expect to see a reserve matters in this afternoon. We could expect to see that on the 1st of May. And again, if it was submitted on the 1st of May as a major application, that could take up to a 16-week process. So we might not actually see an approval or a refusal take place until sort of end of summer on that one. But we can expect to see a reserve matters submitted at any day between now and the 1st of May on this site, and we would have to determine it.
Right. And if they were asking for permission on this for outlining, this is no different to the one that's in existence at the moment.
That's exactly correct. It's an identical application that they've submitted. The only additional information is some extra information from floods that was required as a result of policy change since they last got the permission.
Right. That's just so we're clear. But I can see some hands have gone up, so I'm going to start. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair.
Points of clarification.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Jamie. That was a great report. Just wanted to clarify the enhancement measures, ecological enhancement measures, conditioning. They relate to the report on the 3rd of March from Place Services, and there's 5 conditions in that report. And the other one I was going to ask is there's a condition for measures to improve sustainability of development. Does that relate to the recommendations coming from environmental health in December?
Yes, that would be correct. I think we would also expect to see a report as part of the sustainable measures in regards to how the future houses will be heated, car charging points, all of those type of things would come forward as part of that in reserve matters. In terms of the ecology, yes, there was an issue whereby the applicants had provided extra information to satisfy our ecology consultants. Unfortunately, that stuff was put on our website as sensitive, so no one could actually see it. So when we actually consulted our colleagues, they still raised a holding objection, but we made sure that that was then made visible, to which they released that. In terms of Suffolk Wildlife Trust, they actually provided or upheld their holding objection. We've had further conversations with them that set out in the table to papers. In essence, they're quite satisfied that an additional survey report can take place for reptiles within the actual site itself. I think we're under a standing with our ecology colleagues in place services that probably goes above and beyond the requirements that are needed by the applicant at this stage, but the applicants are quite happy to oblige with that as part of a condition. So we're actually finding we're going a bit above and beyond with the ecology requirements in this instance.
So are we expecting them to provide a environmental management plan, ecology management plan, biodiversity enhancement strategy, and the
Yes.
lighting design scheme?
Yeah, and I think what's really key here, Councillor, is these things weren't captured as part of the 2017 permission that was approved. We did have some ecology conditions that were added to that, but again, we in conversations with the applicant, we're recognising the change of the MPPF that came in 2019, and we're being a lot more stricter in terms of the ecology conditions in this instance, and they're happy to agree with that approach.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ayres.
Out, I thought it was brilliant. I'm just wondering about, I've read through all the details, but it's nothing from Suffolk County Council about school places. So I just wondered, have they, do we know anything about that at all? Because I know with the local high school, they're going to lose sixth form, which would mean the other high school would need more places. I just wondered if you've had any dealings with them.
We've lost you, Jamie.
Oh, am I still here? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent.
Yep.
So yes, I have had conversations with the contributions team in Suffolk County Council. They have put forward what they expect the contributions to be. This will be captured as part of the Section 106 and the SIL requirements as well. So the application, if approved, will have those benefits of financial funding towards the schools.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair, come back. At
yes.
the moment.
Well, there's points of clarification. That's what we're doing at the moment. We don't want to get into debate. Yep.
Okay, well, I'll bring it up in debate.
Oh, okay.
If you want those exact figures, I can try and dig those out before you go to debate.
Would that be helpful, Councillor Ayres?
Yes, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
We'll give you time to find them. I've got Councillor McLaren next.
Oh dear. Thank you, Chair. Very difficult, isn't it, this? Jamie, thank you for that. I found that presentation extremely clear, but I'm not very good at measurements. I'm just want to ask, I know the access has been approved, but can you just explain to me, does that allow two vehicles to be on the access at the same time? And would the access be impeded for emergency vehicles or waste collection vehicles?
Yeah, great question. The access, if I just go into the drawing here, is going to be at least 5.5 metres wide, so that will allow two-way traffic to flow through, and there would be no reason why any waste vehicles or emergency vehicles would be impeded in this instance. We do show as well, it's actually 6 metres wide, apologies. So we've got 2 metre wide footpath, 6 metre wide access, which allows two-way traffic, and then a 2 metre wide footpath on the other side, with a slight area of landscaping that will be able to go in either side as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, whilst we're talking about the access, does this drawing, which is the one that was discharged presumably from the previous application, count towards this current application, or do they have to submit a new one?
No, they have submitted that as part of this application, so we would no longer be adding a condition asking them to supply this additional information again. So this would be an approved document, this one, whereas the other slides that I showed you in regards to the suite of improvements are not approved documents, because that will be captured as part of the 276. But this would be an approved document, this one. That would capture the visibility displays and the measurements for the roads and pathways.
So in actual fact, submitting an approved drawing is counted as actually building an access point.
That's correct.
And the second point I was going to ask was, where is the current access to this piece of land?
So if I come on to maybe this slide would be a good one to show in terms of access. In terms of an access, there is footpath access into the site here. And I would suggest that there is probably enough access for a vehicle as well in terms of agricultural. There is no other vehicle access on the site at all. There are some pedestrian cut-throughs via the allotments and committee woodland that, again, like I say, locals kind of follow this round. I think I had the photo. Just check this one here. There's a kind of gate here, and I think over time, obviously since 2017, it hasn't been used as an agricultural field. It's been left as a grassland, so this footpath's probably become overgrown, but I would suggest that this is the only access for agricultural vehicles in, and presumably the landowner has access to that gate.
So that was the original vehicle access to that piece of land?
Yes, that's correct.
Why is it not being expanded on and developed for the new development or new use of it?
I think we would end up, if you follow this round, it's a bit windy. Let me go, where's the better shot for it? Maybe this one here. So as you come down here, it branches out, and this area here is very thin. I would say that would be very tight for a vehicle. You'd never get two-way traffic along there. From looking on the site and walking down there, there's a gated area around here, so I presume that there's an extra access for what was agricultural at that stage there. I would suggest in terms of the width of area that we'd be able to put an access in here. We wouldn't be able to get two-way traffic in, and that's why it's appropriate to have a look at demolishing the house and allow for two-way traffic more centrally. Also, we've got the bend, so the visibility displays would be hindered in terms of that bend there to have up to 100 houses coming off via that access.
Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for a good presentation. Just going to ask, with the community woodlands, we call that nature reserve. I just want to put that in there anyway, because living in Acton, which is up by the allotments, yeah, and it's what they've made as a nature reserve and everything.
It's really nice.
And yeah. I just thought just so everyone knows when they talk about the nature reserve, that's what they're talking about.
Thank you.
And another thing, why haven't they gone with the other outline? If I'm allowed to say this, why haven't they gone with the other outline planning? Is there any reasons?
Yeah, my understanding is, and perhaps the applicant would go into further detail, but my understanding is that at the moment the applicant is a land promoter, so they were hoping to seal a sale on the land just prior to COVID, and obviously COVID hitting in a year ago brought a lot of uncertainty, and it wasn't necessarily that deal fell through, but it was sort of put on the table and put on hold. As a result, they've come closer and closer to the end of their current permission, and therefore it would be prudent in a business case to make sure that they just renew this application. Hence the reason we've only gone for 18 months on the condition as to provide reserve matters on, rather than the full 2 years that we'd ordinarily ask for. But that's my understanding. In essence, COVID was the issue in this instance of delivering the site to a developer to then bring forward the reserve matters and develop the site.
Can I come back with that? Are you still doing the same reserved matters then as you was in the other outline plan?
So as it stands, and hopefully this doesn't complicate matters, so if this got refused today, they could submit reserve matters under the extant permission. If this got approved today, they could submit reserve matters under either of the two permissions, so either the 2017 or this one. After May the 1st, they would only be able to submit reserve matters onto this site. So we would have to check if a reserve matters was submitted between now and May the 1st, which one it actually tied to, because again, we've got a lot tighter conditions that are put forward on this application than the ones in 2017. So they could still submit a reserve matters under the 2017 application, even if this one was approved or refused.
Okay, thank you.
But obviously, if this one, if we were minded to approve this one, we would get better conditions on this, be more beneficial. Councillor Owen, I think it could be a good question to put to the applicant. I see no other hands up, so I think we'll move on. No, we
Chair,
go
sorry,
to,
I've got Councillor Adrian Osborne's hand up on my screen.
I don't know why it's not showing it on mine, but it's not. Okay, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for finally finding my hand raised.
No, I still can't see it, but I accept
every time
my officers inform me.
Anyway, thank you very much. Can I just say, excellent presentation, Jamie, and your comments that I was going to ask from Councillor Hinton's clarification was part of that. But there's just one. I can remember the site visit we had all those years ago. The footpath 9, is that part of the bridleway that was talked about? There was a great lot of conversation about that bridleway. Is that part of footpath 9, or is that not the bridleway?
I would understand that it's definitely a public right-of-way. We have had some comments that came in from the British Horse Society in terms of what surface they would like to see on there. So it could be construed from that point of view that it is the bridleway as well. I saw no signs at that stage to suggest on site visits, and I checked both ends to suggest that it would be a bridleway, only a public right-of-way. But I haven't seen anything that suggests it's a bridleway also.
Yeah, you show on that drawing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, on that drawing you show the entrance to the high street from there. The other end of that, does that have a clear access onto Barrow Hill, or just by the side of the allotments, I believe?
Yeah, it's only a footpath access. It's definitely not a vehicle one. So I've got a photo here. So you can see here that we've got the girders on that northern part, so that show that it's only a pedestrian footpath. It's definitely not wide enough for a vehicle to get through there either.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Good clarifications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. See no hands up, so we'll go to public speakers now. Parish councils. Christine Johnson of Acton Parish Council. You, madam, have 3 minutes in which to address the committee, which will be timed by the governance officer. And at the end of that, I'll see if there's any questions for you. When you're ready, if you'd like to turn on your mic and turn on your camera, we won't start until we've got you up and running.
Can you hear me, Chairman?
I can hear you, yes. We can't see you, but you could be on the phone to us, I'm not sure.
No, I'm here and I can see me on my screen.
Ah, I can see you now, yep.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, may I begin?
Ready now? Yes, please.
Thank you. Members, first of all, a point of clarification. Mention has been made of the footpath 9 as it leaves the high street. Could that not be used as an entrance to the site? It cannot, because it is not in the ownership of the applicants. The applicant's land only is inside their red boundary, orange boundary on the map I'm looking at now. The other end of that path is owned by a local farmer. There is a right of way for agricultural vehicles over it in order to access the land in the applicant's ownership. And that is all there is there. The northern end of that path is owned by the parish council. Neither of these landowners have been approached in any way. Having said that, I would just like to continue that to create an acceptable visibility display, which the Highway Authority acknowledges will have to be below its normal standards, the developer will widen the footpath along the road, thus reducing the road width to 5.5 metres, less than the width that's being suggested for the new development on the main road through the village. The C711 is a regular bus route. The required width for a bus route is 6 metres. The road is used by large vehicles accessing the industrial straits at either end and by agricultural vehicles. In order to pass each other, they will have to drive over the newly widened path. The parish council believes the decision taken in 27 was wrong, but understands it was inevitable because of the constraints imposed upon you at that time. You had no choice, but you do have a choice now. Since 2017, the site has been actively marketed by Leith Planning, whose own website says they are experts in their field and have a proven track record of delivering projects in time. Yet they've failed to find a buyer in the last 3 years. A site with outline permission for 100 homes in a Suffolk village should have been snapped up. The original intending purchaser withdrew. Since then, 2 companies have surveyed the site and the road in a very detailed manner, but nothing has come of it. Why not? The applicants cannot blame the pandemic. Other sites in the area have sold and work commenced. The parish council considers that in view of the unproven housing need, the current construction of 100 homes at Tamage Road, which happened after you gave permission for this site before, and the contrived vehicular access to the site, you have sufficient justification for not renewing this application and urges you to refuse your consent as it would appear the site is unviable. If you are minded to give consent, however, then we ask that conditions imposed should include the provision of large green buffers to protect the Acton wildlife site and allotment land.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Johnson. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right, I'll see if there's any questions for you. Members. Yes, there's a hand got up. I can't see who it is, I'm afraid.
Councillor Parker, Chair.
Councillor Parker.
Councillor Parker. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning, Mr. Johnson. Could you just explain to us so that we're clear, what is Acton Parish Council's position? Are you supporting this application or objecting to it? And the reason that I ask why is because reading your representations, it would appear that there's an objection, but then halfway down it says the parish would like a mooga included within the site. So I'm not clear as to what your actual position is with regards to this development, please.
The parish council's position is that it is totally opposed to this. We think it's the wrong thing in the wrong place. The Tamage Road development, why people didn't like it, but they've accepted it's going ahead and it's going to work. But this site won't work. And the reason we suggested the mugger was because if it does get permission and it does go ahead, a suggestion for a scout hut with a canoe store is not what we need in Acton. Acton has very little provision for the older children, and if you're going to put something for young people into this site, then we thought that if a sweetener, which is all it is being offered, then a mugger would be more use to us than a canoe site, as we haven't actually got a river. That's the reason for that, but we're not in favour of the thing in the first place.
Thank you. I hope that's helpful, Councillor Parker. Councillor Busby.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, good morning. You started to mention some of the conditions that you would have liked to have seen if this is approved. What were they?
We're concerned, and it will now appear that thought is being given to green buffers.
We want no development to be within 5 metres of the public right of way, because that is a very important thing to the village. The fact that you've had 1,200 people signing a petition about that path should make that clear to you. There also needs to be, as I think the chairman mentioned, the possibility of a road crossing to get children over the road towards the school, because there's a little footpath linking to the school from the high street, but children have got to cross the road. That high street carries an inordinate amount of traffic because it's used as an unofficial bypass for Sudbury, always has been, and I should imagine that practically every one of the members there today will have used it for that reason in the past. We accept that's what happens, but it's not good for crossing. We're worried about the heritage properties on the southern side of the high street. And may I just say to you, officer, that the thatched cottage, which is the one that is listed, is not Marigold. The house next door is called Maygold, and Spring Cottage is the one which is listed. Just for clarification.
I'm sure. Yeah, we'll clear that point up. It's very easy to get them two names muddled, I would have thought. Councillor Busby.
I just thought we'd make it clear what we're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
But there's no edge to those, and we would like to see something put in place to prevent the vehicles from driving right up to the edge of there and damaging their fence. The lady living in Spring Cottage is very.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Mrs. Johnson, because you're getting into our debates. No, hang on a minute. Let me just finish. I think those points of the road widths, I'll get the officer to comment on them, because this is not the first time we've heard that road is narrower and 2 vehicles have difficulty in passing, or large vehicles. So I think we need to get that clarified. Councillor Busby, had you got your answer that you wanted? Because we did go a bit wider. Yeah, thank you. Right, thank you. I've got Councillor Ayres, followed by Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mrs. Johnson. I just wondered, thinking about I know this isn't the Tamage Road, I'm on about school places. Do you know if there are any spare places at Acton Primary School? Thank you.
There are no spare places, nor is there any land on which to extend the school, unless you put an upper story or something like that. They've used up all of their land, really.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson.
Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Mrs. Johnson. Just a quick question on public transport, because a lot is always made of public transport and the fact that it'll green up everybody's agenda. How frequent is the bus service through to Sudbury? Because we saw one big bus there, but presumably the school children have to go by bus as well.
Oh yes, all the school children go by bus. We have Chambers run in the middle of the day. At the moment it's on a special COVID timetable, but it's normally 1 hour in either direction to Bury and Colchester, going through Sudbury, Long Melford, Lavenham, all those places. There is also a little town circular bus, but that only runs 3 times a day and isn't much use to anybody, because you can go to the town on it, but you can't come back again. So I've never quite understood the point of that.
Thank you.
I see no other hands up, so I'll take that. Then thank you very much, Mrs. Johnson. I'm going to ask the officer if he'll just come in and clarify some of those points, particularly the road one that was referred to. Jamie, can you help us out here, please? Jamie? Have we lost him? Mark?
I'm trying to unmute myself. I'm not sure.
Yes, Chair.
I can hear you now. Yeah. Right. Yep.
Excellent. Sorry, it was It's paused. Yeah, in terms of the road, I think what's really important to note here is that the area of footpath to be widened is located in this area here, and at the moment it's key to point that it's no less than 5.5 metres. The scheme at the moment is not necessarily saying it will definitely be 5.5 metres all the way across. What we're saying is that as part of the section 278 that will be agreed, that it will go no less than 5.5 metres, which is as per the highway standards. So we might find in certain areas where the path doesn't need to be widened at all, it will remain its current width.
So highways are satisfied with that, you're telling us?
Exactly that, yes.
Thank you.
May I
Right,
offer
we'll
some comments on some other parts raised?
Yes, please do.
In terms of the green buffers, I noted in the presentation that there is some landscape recommendations as part of the report that the applicant submitted and part of the report that came from our landscape consultant. And you also notice in the table papers, due to ecology, we are expecting to see a 30-metre buffer on that footpath 9 area, unless additional surveys can prove otherwise of that requirement, and that is to do with badgers in short. So the concept plan for the drainage might help with this. It currently shows a 15-metre buffer. Like I said, we are expecting a 30-metre buffer along here, where we won't be expecting any construction to take place at all other than the actual improvements to the surface. That may not be a rigid line. We might see a kind of wavy line that comes in place depending on additional surveys that might be submitted, and we've conditioned that so that the parish council can be confident in seeing a very large buffer beyond the 5 metres that they're requesting, as mentioned by Christine Johnson just then. And if it's okay also, Chair, just to mention in terms of the contributions for the school that was asked for earlier. I will put it on screen because this is a public document that is as part of the consultees that came in, so it's just easier to show. And your figures are just there. So in terms of early year expansion, we're expecting 155,000 to be made as a contribution through SIL, and we also have secondary school and sixth form expansions also.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yep, thank you. We'll move on. We now have an objector, Roberta Carradine. Would you like to address the committee? You have up to 3 minutes, and at the end of it, I'll see if there's any questions for you. If you'd like to turn on your microphone, I can't see why my camera's gone off. Put that back on. Right.
Right. Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We cannot. Yes, I can see you now.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. Okay. Concerns of residents remain the same as those raised in 2017. The legal binding restricted covenant on Bewley remains in place and is being completely ignored. Suffolk Highway's visibility display wide dimension of 65 metres is not being met, ignoring the joint ownership of the party hedge shown for removal and the use of a 1 metre travel distance from the curb, which is not possible due to road width, are no more than failed attempts to increase the wide dimensions. The properties on the south side of the High Street already experience significant vehicle erosion, yet the proposed pavement widening would push traffic closer to these, which include listed buildings. HGVs and buses often mount the pavement when passing one another, and the proximity of traffic to pedestrians is alarming. The predicted rush hour is woefully inaccurate and based on out-of-date information. It also omits the traffic implications of the Scout Hut. The Commissioner states the district has 950 scouts and is proposing this will be the area's HQ. Journeys will have a similar effect to that of a school. These could be a daily occurrence with a succession of meetings from the various age groups unless restrictions are put in place. The village continues to experience drainage and sewage issues, low water pressure, periods of low power, and telecoms at full capacity. Basically, the infrastructure is already struggling. The development of 100 homes on the Tamage Road site has started, with developments in Chiltern and Great Waldingfield, which means there is no unmet local or district housing need, which would necessitate the acceptance of this speculative proposal. As the Community Speedwatch Coordinator, I can confirm vehicle volume and speeds have increased significantly since 2017, and yet no new traffic survey has been commissioned. Concerns about speeding and overtaking on the High Street have led to the request for an SDR deployment from the Camera Safety safety team, and additionally, HGV usage has increased to such a level that the parish council is being urged to apply for weight restrictions for this C classification road. The area in question has been used for over 40 years as a local amenity, and over the past 12 months has become even more important to residents' health and mental well-being, whilst offering a home to an ever-increasing range of wildlife. Residents question the validity and viability of this site with its contrived access. The additional traffic flow and impact on the utility infrastructure will be to the detriment of the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any points of clarification? Sorry, any questions to the objector? Sorry. No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on.
Sorry, Chair, I wanted to ask the question.
Yes, I think, yes, she's still there. That's wonderful.
Yes,
Councillor Busby, sorry about that.
Yeah, given the fact that we've already got an existing application approved, this one provides us with a bit more protection, if you like. Wouldn't you prefer to see this one approved rather than the other one?
If I had to choose between the two, yes, anything that makes things better would be an advantage, but I still stand by the site is not viable. They cannot find a buyer. Who is going to go to the expense of putting in a great length of infrastructure to get down to the high street? I mean, the sewage costs must be mind-numbing. And for 100 homes, it's not viable for a developer to do. You know, if you said 400 houses, they'd have sold it 6 times over. But for the number of properties that's being proposed, no developer is really going to look at it seriously until there are all other land options that are used up. I don't believe it can be viable for a developer to make. So I wasn't even going to comment. I was press-ganned by my fellow neighbours who said I
think you've answered that question. Well, Councillor Busby was another one.
Well, what I'm understanding is therefore that you, given a choice between the two, if you had to pick one, you would pick this one. But actually, you want us to reject this in the hope that the previous one runs out of time. Is that
correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other hands up. Councillor Busby, well done. Yes. Oh, Jamie Edwards, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you very much. I think it's just important to note that, we would, in terms of viability, if a developer is willing to spend extra money and not make a profit out of the site, then that's up to their prerogative. If there was a argument of viability to say that it's too expensive and therefore they want more houses as a result or less affordable housing, then we would expect viability assessments to be submitted as part of that argument, to which no argument on that case is being made by the applicant in this instance. So in terms of extra costs, if the developer is at a loss, then that's up to them, but that's not something that we can take into consideration.
Thank you. I see your hands come back, Councillor Busby, but it is questions to the objector. If you want to take up that point that Officer Martin Edwards has just made, that can be done in debate. Councillor Busby? Oh, he's gone. Right. Thank you. We'll move on then. We now move to the ward member, Councillor Malvesi. You have
Councillor Jameson with a question.
Have we? Sorry, my thing isn't lighting up. Some of them come up.
I was going to say, Miss Chair, I don't have that either. But we don't have the ward members yet, Chair. We've got the applicant.
Oh, sorry. I've jumped the applicant. I do apologise for that. I have it on another screen, and for some reason that hadn't came up. I'd gone down too far. Right, there's no other hands up. Sorry, Councillor Movies, we'll come back to you shortly. We now move to. We don't have a supporter, so I'll now ask the applicant to speak. Paul Grover, you have 3 minutes in which to address the committee.
Good morning, Chair.
If you'd like to put your mic on and your camera on.
Yes, they're both on. Can you hear and see me, everybody?
I can't see you at the moment.
Okay, my camera's on.
Do we need to take down the slide for that?
I believe Mr.
No,
yeah.
Right, we've got it now. Yeah.
Can you see me now? That's good.
Yes, I can see you.
Okay,
That's
excellent.
lovely.
Thank you very much. So good morning, chairs and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to reiterate the background and justification of our client's outline planning application at Babergh Hill, Acton. Firstly, the application before you is in effect seeking to renew an earlier outline planning permission granted for an identical development on the site that was approved in December 2017. Whilst a purchaser was secured for the site, sadly, the onset of the COVID pandemic created challenges in completing the purchase for our client as a charity. As we move out of the pandemic, I can confirm that negotiations are now at the final stages with a new purchaser who is keen to submit their reserve matters applications as soon as possible. Approval of the consent before you will allow us a little more time within which to submit the finer details of a scheme. It should be noted that the officers have limited the time frame for the submission of the reserve matters for the new application, and we confirm we've raised no objection in this regard. I'd remind members that this is an outline application with access being applied for at this stage. All other matters in relation to the proposal in terms of layout, scale, appearance and landscaping will be addressed through the reserve matters. The applicant is wholly aware of the comments received during the life of this application from the local community, and note that the majority of the concern is based on the impact of the highway network and site access. In this regard, we'd remind members that the principle of a development for this site has already been established by virtue of the earlier consent and access arrangements approved under discharge of condition 17 of the previous outline application. We note that Highways Authority is supportive of the application subject to the imposition of conditions and informatives on the grant of any consent, as well as the provision of monies within the Section 106 and the 278, which we've raised no objection to. It's understood that the local community also have some concerns in relation to the impact of the development on ecology and the environment. We confirm that the application has been supported with all the necessary reports to demonstrate the acceptability of the scheme, and any additional matters raised during the life of the application have been addressed to the full satisfaction of the statutory consultees, which has included and resulted in the extended buffer alongside the footpath. Please note that mitigation set out within the supporting reports is referenced within the draft conditions and will be opposed on the application. We consider that there's sufficient information provided to enable the grant of consent. So, as set out within the conclusion of the officer's report, this application is recommended for approval subject to a number of conditions, informatives of Section 278 and Section 106. We confirm that our client is in agreement with all the requests being made in this regard, and the applicant is more than content to adhere to the obligations set out in the officer's report. In short, this is an application to effectively renew an extant outline planning permission for the site to allow us some additional time for the preparation and submission of reserve matters. The site is sustainably located, is proposed to be included within the settlement boundary within the emerging local plan, and will help the authority meet its housing needs on a site that is available, deliverable and suitable for the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got that in quite good. I know it's difficult sometimes. Points of clarification. I've just got a couple, which I just want to put to you. We've heard comments about the boat canoe house. Well, there isn't a river that runs through Acton. Would you be in a position to have discussions with them regarding that in the reserved matters? That's the first point. And the second one, which I feel quite strongly about, I had a house and estate built in Great Cornard, and they had to cross a road similar to this, and I do agree with the locals when they say the traffic do drive along that road. It's a bit of a rat race, a rat run. A pedestrian crossing or a crossing there, I would think would be quite useful. What would your view be, that this could be looked at, or is this something outside that you would have to go back?
So let's address the Scouts first of all. Yes, we're open to a conversation. We've been speaking to the Scouts in terms of their need. We've allocated the land for them. Yes, you don't have a river immediately here, but in terms of the Scouts going off and using sites, they've requested the storage of their canoe facilities. Okay. That's come from them. And secondly, in terms of the potential for crossing, yes, we're certainly open to that in terms of the 278 conversations. I guess the question comes back to possibly for Jamie to pick up in terms of that accommodation of that within the road width, but in terms of conversations, that's not been raised as an issue by Transport or by Suffolk, but it's certainly something we're happy to have a conversation as we hopefully move the application forward.
Thank you. Right, members, is there any hands going up for questions to the applicant? Councillor Busby?
Yeah, the increase in the buffer zone to 30 metres will eat quite considerably into the site and the amount of space that's available for housing. Are you still confident that you can deliver 100 houses on the site?
Yes. The answer is yes, we can accommodate 100 houses on the site. If you look at the previous planning consent that we've actually got, there's a lot of area within that site beyond the 100 houses. What the extended buffer on the boundary now enables us to do is to create a biodiversity enhancement within our scheme, which actually we believe adds to the value of the scheme for residents and for the existing community, something that wasn't available in the previous scheme.
Thank you. Obviously a salesman in your previous life.
Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Paul. If this is approved today, will you accept the conditions, or will your client be happy to go with the conditions on this application, or will they try to get back reserved matters in time to use the previous outline?
We've got agreement in terms of moving the, if we get the permission today, moving this application forward, which is why in conversations with the planning officer, we've looked to reduce the time that we would normally have for the implementation of the reserve matters. We've reduced that to 18 months, and that's because our client's committed to moving forward the scheme as best they can. As I mentioned at the outset, our client, being a charity, has to ensure that they deliver the best outcome for the site, and that means working with the potential developer. Slightly different than just taking a normal site to market. This is actually making sure that they, as a charity, they meet the Charity Act response in terms of making the best available scheme that they can come forward. So they have to deliver the best scheme.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Mr. Kelly-Grover, good morning. Thank you. I just would like your thoughts or your comments, please. The previous speakers, both from the Parish Council and the previous objector, suggested or contended that that this site was not viable. But you contend, obviously you do, but can you put some flesh on the bones around why you consider this is viable, please?
Yes, so in terms of the mix of the scheme, we've been talking to, as mentioned before, a number of potential investors. Last time round, before the COVID pandemic, we had an offer on the table, and that has slowed down in terms of coming forward, and that has been revisited over the last 12 months, and now we're in a position where that scheme can come forward. We have a developer who's looking to bring this forward as a scheme in its entirety. So we don't question the deliverability. They haven't offered up in terms of a viability assessment. They believe that they can deliver the scheme with 100 units on this site to their capabilities and meet their requirements moving forward. So they have confirmed to us that they can deliver that. And again, going back to the Charity Commission, we need to ensure that our client as a charity has a viable delivery partner, which is what we believe we now have.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Kelly-Grover. Being on the planning committee, we hear lots of views from parish councils and developers. How often or how many times have you had in-depth discussions with the parish council and perhaps the residents of Acton?
So there's been a series of ongoing conversations, if you remember, through the 2017 planning application. We have attended some of the parish council meetings where we don't speak at them. We attend and listen to what's being discussed. The issues that have been raised, we've then taken back to either the council officers or raised with the local wildlife trust or with Natural England. So what we've sought to do is issues that we've heard being raised, we've sought to address. So the issue about the buffer towards the east of a site, that's working on what we believed was going to be one of the key issues, which was about the movement and the access. So we've sought to provide a response. What we haven't done is then taken that response directly back to the parish council. As we've said, it's gone through the officer's report in terms of how we've addressed that through the planning conditions. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, because often residents, perhaps more than parish councils, often have some concerns about the lack of consultation. It seems to be a common sort of theme with many people.
Yes, and also if you remember in terms of where we are with the development plan and the boundary coming forward and the consultation on sites, as the local residents would have also had that opportunity through the local plan process, in addition to the 2017 planning application and the current plan application. As I said in my statement, the two areas which we believe from our engagement with the community are around the access point and the ecology point. Access, we believe we have addressed in the previous condition 17 discharge, but as set out in the officer's report, we are still looking to work through the 278 to improve that access even more, to hopefully overcome those residents' concerns. And then we've also been looking at producing that sustainability appraisal and also biodiversity enhancement. They were the key issues that were coming out of the community, which we think we've addressed. And then finally, the one that was raised again this morning was around the scouts and what the scouts' needs are. As we said, we've allocated a site for them within there, and we'll continue to work with them in terms of the timing and accommodation of what they need as a community group.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Owen, I'm glad I've got a little note here to bring you in, but I can't remember what the question was.
No,
so
I think they've answered that question.
Oh, good, right. Anyway, Councillor Owen, you've got a question.
Yeah, if this gets approved today, will you continue talking to the parish?
Yes.
Not to leave them out, continue everything, anything you discuss and continue with them, because I think that's really important.
I completely agree, and I think that's very important. If we are successful today, we need to continue that conversation. What's going to be key for this site coming forward is access and use of it by the community. This isn't a gated development. There is the main footpath that runs alongside the site, which is for the community and for the parish. We've also got a community asset sitting in there with the scout hut. So we want this to be part of the community, and that means working with the parish in terms of how we bring it forward. Also, in terms of the legacy, as I've mentioned, given that the site is owned by a charity at the moment, we want to ensure that there is a good relationship going forward, not just for the charity as they exit from the site, but also from the developer when they come and bring the site forward. So working together with the parish is going to be very important.
Okay, and obviously you've got the nature reserve there that would like to, yeah.
Yes, so one of the questions that we've been doing through this updated review, we've obviously undertaken much more in-depth ecology assessments than were under the 2017 approval, and that has identified some additional works that we need to do, and they've been conditioned and they relate to the relocation or translocation of newts from the site. We've also been talking about the opportunities for enhancement of the site for reptiles and other areas. So hopefully all those measures should help enhance the nature reserve and link to it so that we're getting a more biodiversity from this site than we currently have.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no more hands are up, so I'll take it that's all the questions. Thank you, sir, for that. We'll move on. We'll now get to the ward member. Thank you, Mr. Grover.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Chair. May I just put a couple of points in terms of some of the discussions that took place there for clarification?
Yes, I think perhaps we can do that while he's there. Just remain where you are. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Could I just put it to you, Mr. Edwards, that one of the members said about the 30 metre or the wider buffer zone. I seem to think when the Vice Chairman and I questioned this at briefing, we were told this wouldn't necessarily be a rigid straight line, because there may be areas where it wouldn't need to be as wide as that, because there are some parts where there's a badger run, so it could go in and out along, and perhaps a wavy line might look better than a solid rigid line. Can you just clarify that point as well?
Yes, of course. The way that we've worded the condition is so we don't just have a rigid straight line along the eastern boundary. We've worded it in a way that they would need to otherwise provide additional surveys to suggest why they could then come in, say, 15 metres in one area, but then go back out and allow for that wavy line. That would be a bit more of an organic approach as well, particularly when you're trying to use the footpath 9 in terms of how it's experienced. In terms of some of the points that have been raised through the discussions, in terms of the crossing, I would agree that if this was a brand spanking new application, we were looking at face value straight from the beginning. It's something that I would, as personally as an officer, be looking to secure. I think we have to be very careful that we have already decided that it is acceptable on site without the crossing. I wouldn't want to give anyone any reason to submit reserve matters under the 2017 application. But of course, if the applicant is willing to offer that as part of a section 278, then of course we can take that forward, and that would be an extra additional bonus. In terms of the Scouts, there was a letter that was received as part of the consultation from the Scouts. They have basically notified us that they are renting farmer barns at the moment to store equipment in. Having this land so they can build their own hut would mitigate the need for rental costs for storing their equipment. They'd have it all in one place and reduce their logistics, and that means that those funds that they would then be saving can then go back into the young people that are part of that organisation, which I think is an important point to note. I've also had some clarification in terms of school places into the primary school. Our colleagues at Suffolk County Council have let us know that the primary school forecasts provided by the Education indicate that the school rolls are falling, and by September 22 there is forecasted to be circa 50 surplus places in that primary school in Acton. That's come directly from our Education Department in Suffolk County Council. And then the final point that I wanted to just say, by no means is this a material consideration in any of the members' decision making today, but rest assured, in terms of my approach to planning and my first point of being involved in this site, that if the application was submitted for reserve matters, I'd be more than happy to accommodate a meeting with the parish council to run through what the reserve matters has been submitted. Obviously, I don't have any control of that outside of an application being submitted, but definitely happy to accommodate a conversation with the parish council and give them, prior to their comments being received for a formal consultation, a kind of presentation of what's been submitted and where the different conditions are being met or not met. May it be that case.
Thank you for that, Jamie. Just before you go, so just to be clear, if we were minded to approve this application, could we add on an extra condition regarding the pedestrian crossing or not? Or is this something that can be taken away? Because I think there is a strength of feeling that something is needed there.
I think Sorry to interrupt. I think that if the applicant is happy for that condition and there is an agreement to add it on, then I would be satisfied. I think that if the applicant at this stage was not satisfied with adding that condition on, I would not see that it would meet the requirements for a condition to be added. Would it be reasonable, considering we didn't do it on the 1st 2017? Would it be reasonable on the basis we don't have any additional evidence that shows that there should be an access there, pedestrian crossing when it wasn't required the first time round? I think in terms of a new speed survey being taken in 2020 would probably be unreasonable, considering the lack of traffic that's taken place as a result of COVID. That might skew things a little bit. So I would say I'm happy to add a condition on as long as the applicants are in agreement with it. If they're not in agreement with it, I would feel not so confident to add it on because it wouldn't meet the tests of a condition in this instance.
I don't know whether it would be an order for me to ask the agent whether that would be possible. If you feel you can't give an answer to that, I will understand, but I think I have to ask that.
You can ask me the question. Obviously, I don't have authority at this point to talk about adding a condition on, but I think there is that opportunity when we've talked about the access and the narrowing and where we talked about the reducing the speed, about when we look at that 278, which we've already got under the transport piece, how we could look at whether there was room to accommodate a crossing in that point. So That's like a politician's answer. I can't say yes, but I think there
Right.
is scope to explore this further. And if we are minded to approve today, obviously we can talk with Jamie further as a case officer in terms of the wording of the condition. And it might be with one of those conditions we can look to amend the wording to make reference to exploring an island or an improved crossing area. It's just the detail of what that could be at this stage.
Thank you. I can see my chief planning officer's coming in. He's going to perhaps put us all straight.
I think
Russell.
that given that the Highway Authority didn't request this, I'd advise trying to parachute it in at this moment. I mean, I think maybe an informative saying at the reserve matter stage, could this be looked at, just to let it know that it's something that the community would like. But I think any imposition at this stage wouldn't appear to be reasonable. Ian,
I mean, I'm just coming in briefly to strongly endorse what Mark has just said. That's very fair advice.
Yeah, no, I do hear all what's being said, but also on the other hand, I've seen firsthand in Great Cornard where it wasn't put in, and we had to campaign to get it, and in the end, the developer did put one in, and it solves a lot of problems. It really does, and traffic does go up and down that road. Anyway, we'll leave that. We'll move on. Thank you very much, Mr. Grover. Thank you for your patience there. I'm going to go to the ward member now, which is Elizabeth Maldavies. You, madam, have 5 minutes in which to address the committee. Over to you.
Thank
Get
you
me
very
out of
much,
hot water.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh dear, I've got the wrong thing up. Right. Today we've been informed that 1,211 residents have signed an e-petition with regard to this application. This equals 64% of the voting population of Acton. Now, councillors, we are often charged with not listening to our voters, our residents. So I hope on this occasion you are. The housing needs survey should have been done independently, but it wasn't. Clause 3.38 refers to district as well as local needs, but given there are 1,200 signatures, I would respectfully suggest that only local housing needs be considered and not district-wide, which means there is no need for 3 to 4 bedroom houses. However, there is a huge need for affordable starter homes with some retirement homes, so that local people who've lived in the village all their life can downsize and retire in their village. CS21 refers to the provision of infrastructure. Suffolk County claim there's a continuous, this means uninterrupted, cycle route from the development to the school. Really? Maybe they intend building a bridge. No, better a tunnel, then the hedgehogs can cross the road safely as well. At 4.4, they recognise that the average speed in a 30-mile-per-hour zone is 38. Does Suffolk County really believe that the proposals will work in an area where the average speed is 38 during the day when they want to shrink the road? The document before you states that intensification of traffic will not adversely impact the existing road network. Really? An increase of 150 cars coming in and out of? If the committee is minded to grant outline planning permission, I respectfully request that the construction environmental management plan be very detailed. This is key. There's no back door to be used. There's only one entrance. It will have to stipulate a booking in system for all construction deliveries, just as retailers do, so that you don't have 4 or 5 articulated 40-foot long vehicles queuing up on the high street, waiting to tip and move on. This scenario is already occurring on another development in Acton with devastating results. The Scout Hut storage is going to lead to even more vehicle traffic. The Acton Local Nature Reserve, the allotments, the footpaths that circumvent the entire site, thus creating a green open space, which this development will remove. The FP9, footpath 9, drops down to the pedestrian access off the high street, which acts as a natural drainage basin, unlike the one on your slide. I suggest you go and visit it, because that's where the water falls naturally. The local nature reserve and allotments area is home to an unbelievably large number of birds, including barn owls. It is also home to great crested newt, slowworms and other invertebrates. It's a public amenity used daily by locals and visitors who walk around the hedges connecting to and through the northern parcel of Community Woodland Trail. The removal of a small number of trees is concerning because it's a biodiversity loss. Therefore, that confirms that this development will harm. It should not. The developer is now obliged to demonstrate how it will deliver a biodiversity net gain, not a loss. May I respectfully remind the committee that they committed to the Climate Change Emergency Plan, as well as the Biodiversity Action Plan. This development will harm the village of Acton. It will greatly diminish the amenity value and impinge on biodiversity offering in the area. Therefore, if this grant is to remain in place, I would ask the committee to be minded to consider a condition that the developer install a safe crossing point, a zebra crossing, a pelican crossing, that's their choice, which would also have the added benefit of slowing down traffic in a much reduced road width. Also, that the developer retain all the footpaths that circumvent the site currently. I strongly urge the committee to be minded in this regard and to hear the 1,211 voices that signed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mavisi. I'll see if there's any questions for you. Just one point picking up on the pedestrian crossing, you did hear the officers say that we cannot add a condition at this late 11th hour that wasn't added on the 2017 approval. So I suppose all you could do is agree to or voice the opinion that you'd like the applicant to seriously look at that point. Could I ask for your clarification on that?
Most certainly, I would ask the committee to request of the applicant that they give serious consideration to that. I would also ask that the committee seriously consider, by visiting the other development site in the village, the issues surrounding delivery of construction materials, given the issues that you have with the access point. You've got
Thomas Road, I think that's a point we can take up on the works management plan, and I'll ask our officers to comment on that. In fact, I can.
The Sudbury Road one, if I can interject, the Sudbury Road is a less frequently used piece of road. And there are 3 or 4 vehicles queuing up, waiting to turn into the site, and they have 2 access points. You've only got 1 access point, a 44-tonner, 40-foot vehicle, queuing up one after the other in Acton. It's a recipe for disaster. So, yeah.
I will get the officers to comment on that point in a moment for you. I'll see if there's any other speakers. I've got Councillor Ayres.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Liz. Liz, I'm also concerned about the volume of traffic.
Your question.
My question is also that junction of the A134 going into Acton. Has any consideration? We need a roundabout there, don't we?
Yes, true. But I think that in terms of haulage traffic, heavy duty vehicles, that junction off the 134 is perfectly adequate going into Acton. I think the issue surrounds the 134 and Bull Lane on the Melford side, but I don't believe that's an issue for this committee on this day.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ayres. There's no other hands up. So if that's the case, then I'll ask the officer if you'd just like to comment on what he's just heard. Jamie? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in regards to the construction management plan, as always, we set up a draft condition list as part of any application that goes towards committee. The applicants have had sight of this. They're all listed, obviously, within the report. A construction management plan is included in there, and one of the parts of that construction management plan condition requires them to provide us details of delivery times and expectations of deliveries within that condition. So we're expecting to have that as part of a discharge condition before they start works. Other elements within that condition, they're required to provide an evidence photographic information about the current condition of the roads and paths, and then again once the development has been provided, so to make sure that we can sort of check back and say actually it's in a really poor state to what it was previously. So we've put some fail safes in there to make sure that we're getting proper development or good development in this instance. I think the key one that's been picked up there is in regards to deliveries and construction vehicles queuing up in the road. That is part of the condition that's in there. The applicants have agreed to that condition. We would see that prior to commencement. And the last thing that I would add, whilst is definitely an unfortunate event through disturbance through development, it is of course only a temporary process whilst the development is being built.
Thank you. I see the Chief Officer wants to come in. Could I just ask, and you might be able to pick this up, Mr. Russell, have we learned any lessons with management plans as a result of some of the activities going on in other developments in Acton? I'm
yes,
trying to choose my words very carefully because I
mean,
hear what Jamie Edwards, the officer concerned, has said. I've heard what the local member has said, and I think we've got to make sure that there will be more checks or more improvements, or we've learned something.
Yeah,
can't just ignore it.
Did think that the Tamage Road issues might crop up, Chair. So I've been speaking to planning enforcement and also environmental control. The matter has been dealt with. I'm not saying that everything is wonderful, but we did react quite quickly to that and made it as good as possible. Construction management plans are a good idea. We use them. We do, we do routing conditions, etc. But in the end, unless you have intervention from the highway authority, you can't actually dictate the weight and size of traffic and which way it goes on the highway network. So you do as much as you can, but a local planning authority can't make a lorry go this way instead of that way. So it's not going to be a perfect solution, but we make it as good as we can.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully that satisfies you a little bit, Councillor Mofisi.
Could I just have clarity, because everything that I've read up in preparation for this referred to a construction environmental management plan. However, Jamie Edwards only refers to a construction management plan.
Right, I'll allow that as clarification.
Yes, of course. I'm just going through I think it's over 40 conditions that have been drafted, just to make sure. And if it's okay, Chair, may I share this on screen? Would it be helpful?
Yep.
If you just give me 2 seconds.
We're really only interested in that one point at this moment. We don't want to go any wider.
As it stands, it's put down as condition 31. The number may change, but this is the prior to commencement construction environmental management plan. So they will need to submit these details. If I just zoom in a little bit easier, so it might be easier to read. This is what we're putting forward as a draft condition, and I have had comments back from the applicant, none of which look to reword or change this condition. So this is how we see that condition going in.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Also, I think what Council was saying is, have we got a construction management plan as well, which is just
construction management plan is just a bit further up, I believe, which is this one here.
There you go. Thank you.
Yep, lovely.
Thank you.
That's answered both our points. Good.
Yeah.
Right. Is there any other questions to the ward member? No other hands up. So thank you. We'll move on. The second ward member, Councillor John Nunn.
Thank you very much.
Present. Robert. Councillor Nunn. He's not present. Right.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, do you still need me present, or can I leave the meeting?
You can leave the meeting, or you can join in silence and watch the deliberations.
I'm afraid I have to leave the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. I'm assuming Councillor Nunn is not present, so we're going to move on. We now get to debate. Members, it's now up to you. Who'd like to start in the debate? The only hand up is Councillor Mavisi, which is wrong. Councillor Busby.
I'll start with a quick one. It mentions in the report that there's actually overhead electricity lines that run through the site. No, I don't remember those from the site visit, although it was quite a while ago, and I can't remember seeing them in the picture. Is that correct?
Good point. Jamie, can you help?
Yes, indeed. So from 2017, there wasn't any. My understanding is that they are now there. And Chair, if it's okay, I don't mind sharing my slides again. I probably should have pointed that out.
Well, if you can find one with it in, just so that Councillor Busby and the rest of us are clear.
2 seconds loads, and if we have a look at these two slides here. So this is with our back to the access. We can see the overhead lines coming in to play there.
And that road in the background, is that Barrow Hill?
That's Barrow Hill, yep.
Yeah.
So you can see the tops of the houses there. That's this area here with the community woodland in this area here, or nature reserve.
Lovely.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, are we not supposed to build beneath overhead lines or within a certain distance of them?
As it stands, we don't have the reserve matters in. We don't know exactly where the houses are going to be going. So that could be part of the reserve matters in terms of overhead lines don't go over buildings. I don't think that there's necessarily a planning law reason to say that we can't build underneath, but there are obviously informatives from the utilities companies and what they would prefer. But again, we don't know what the layout is at this stage. They would need to take that into consideration as part of it. We may find that they want to put them underground as part of the development, but that will come forward at a later stage.
Thank you. Councillor Hinton.
Good, everything's clicked in, I hope. Yeah. This is a difficult one. We're caught between a rock and a hard place, aren't we? Because there was a reserve matters, an outline permission granted in 2017. If it hadn't been for the dreaded COVID, it would have expired and we wouldn't be having this fuss now in terms of which one do we do and whether we're being pressured into anything. I'm a bit disappointed that we haven't got anybody from Highways present, because once again, they are showing their inconsistencies when it comes to Highways matters, because they're quite prepared to see a road narrowed by having a larger footpath. They're also talking about gates on the entrance to the village to slow down the traffic, which, as the speed survey has shown, is exceeding the speed limit by a considerable amount. And yet in my own village, they were quite prepared to say, well, if you open up the village and create a nice big wide open space, that will slow down the traffic. So they're never consistent when it comes to these things. And you sometimes wonder whether they've actually turned out to have a look at them, as we found for that application in Capel, where we found out that the officer hadn't even actually been out to see where the entrance was going to be, except that he had been in the area about 2 years previously to look at a tree. So I'm a bit disappointed in that aspect. I think Highways is going to be an important issue here. I'm not a great fan of pedestrian crossings. There was a proposal for a pedestrian crossing in my village, which we managed to stop in actual fact, for the simple reason that we produced evidence which showed that more children get hurt at pedestrian crossings than they do where there isn't one. And that's partly because they often take shortcuts rather than go all the way up the road to the pedestrian crossing. They cut beforehand, thinking that the traffic's going to stop for them anyway. And that's been proven. So it's a difficult one. I think the housing needs is an important aspect. They haven't actually shown that there's a need in that particular area, and I think the district-wide need is dependent upon homes being built rather than permissions being granted, because we're still running at about 6,000 permissions granted, which haven't even started yet. So if they all start, we'll have so many houses here we won't know whether we're coming or going. So it's a difficult one. I'll see what other people have got to say on this, but I think this is a very difficult one.
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And yes, I agree with much of what Councillor Hinton has just said there. We are in a very tricky position. So I'd like to get some understanding from from perhaps a legal position or a technical position with regards to. I mean, obviously, as a planning committee, it's within our gift to decide how we decide this application today. But given that we have an extant commission in place, what are, for example, the ramifications if members were minded to refuse this application? Can we even do that, given that the circumstances and all the features of the application are precisely the same as they were back in 2017? So that's my question. But if I may be permitted, Chairman, I just want to make a statement, and that is that yet again here in Acton, we're being faced with a substantial application that's before us. And I'll just take on board the comments that Councillor Malvesi said, that we ought to listen to the members of our public. And as we've said before, and we said it at the Tamage Road application last year as well, we are so often informed in this committee now with the existence or the emergence of neighbourhood plans, and yet here again we're looking at a large application in Acton, but no sign of a neighbourhood plan. And I'm somewhat puzzled as to why a village such as Acton, which is so attractive to developers, and I know it's not material to this application, but it does tie our hands as a planning committee. And I just ask, we've got a lot of experience in Acton. Councillor Maybury herself is chairman of the parish council. We've heard from one of the ward members, Babergh member. Why have we not even proposed a neighbourhood plan in Acton? So anyway, that's not material to this application, but I'd be interested in getting an answer to the first question. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
You've made that statement, and I'm sure that will land on people's ears and in their minds. Thank you. Legal, can you help us on the first part?
Certainly, yes. I mean, my planner colleagues might want to speak as well. But on the first point, I think there's two legal principles that it's easy to get mixed up, and they should be distinguished. One is consistency of decision making. The judges have said in the High Court and above that consistency in public sector decision making is an important principle, and if you're disagreeing with an earlier one, you should give adequate reasons. But I mean, having said that, Jamie Martin, your officer, Mr. Martin Edwards, has not put a great deal of weight on it, has not really gone into that in the report, because it only applies with full force if there is the planning balance is very much the same as, and I don't think he's saying that. What he is saying quite rightly in the report is that there's a different principle, that there is often, quite sometimes, when you come to make a planning decision, there is what we call the fallback position, i.e. what the applicant could do if we said no today, or indeed if we delayed for some reason in making the decision. And I think the fallback position is where it applies, and it is a material consideration. And I think your officer is advising you quite rightly that in this case it's a forceful and strong material consideration to which you should give considerable weight, on the basis that if yes, as Councillor Hinton's just said, because of the national emergency, the deadline for applying for reserved matters has been extended, and therefore an application for reserved matters could be made up until the 1st of May and would then extend would keep the old planning permission, the December 2017 permission, alive. So yes, there it is. I mean, I hope I've represented Jamie's view fairly on that.
Did you want to add anything, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think the only thing that I would say is if this was a brand spanking new application without an extant permission, I would expect a little bit more detail outline in terms of a indicative layout plan. We've kind of got that through the drainage concept plan to a certain degree, albeit it doesn't satisfy some of the buffers that their ecology reports require. So I think if this was a brand spanking new application with no extant permission, I would definitely be asking a lot more information in terms of indicative plans for layout to show us and prove to us that we can fit up to 100 houses on there. But that's a key point, it is up to. So if they can't get 100, we might see an application reserve matters for 90 to make sure that they've got all the buffers in, for example. I think the other key point is that if there was no extant permission on this site and we refuse today, our joint local plan emerging encapsulates this within the settlement boundary. and we are in that joint local plan favourable with the principle of development of housing inside the settlement boundary, and that's a key point here. We are merely looking at the principle of development in this instance, with access included. Everything else is to come at a later date, and our emerging joint local plan, whilst it does have very, very limited weight at this stage until it is submitted to an examiner, includes this site within the settlement boundary of Acton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, members, quite a lot of information there. Councillor Busby.
Yeah, just to be at odds with that last point, it's not an allocated site in the JLP, and I guess it was the team decided to extend the village boundary because there was a possible development going to be on that site. But if it's not allocated in the JLP, then I would have thought that carries as much weight as the village boundary being extended. The difference is, I mean, I was looking for trying to find reasons why you would want to turn this down, and the conditions are different. The reason that it got through in the first place was because we didn't have a
plan.
Yeah, we didn't have enough houses. That's right. So that was the only reason it got through. I have a number of concerns, really, which I would like addressed. I'm very concerned about the drainage. With that street coming down, straight down through the access, water will pour down there straight towards the listed building. That can't be allowed to happen. There's got to be something that breaks a flow of water on the street. If you get a heavy rainstorm, there could be quite a lot of water flow down there. It's quite a steep hill, so the water would come down. I'm also concerned about the access. I think the construction traffic is going to have a difficulty getting into and out of that access with the width of the road, and that again puts the listed building in potential danger. And we're supposed to be protecting these kind of things. It's only got to take one accident or one driver that miscalculates, and there could be serious damage to the listed building. I don't know how you can protect against that. Electricity lines, I don't like building beneath electricity lines or in the proximity of them either. I think it would be useful if we could stipulate that there should be, and you'll like this one, Chair, bungalows on the southern edge of the site, so that we haven't got buildings overlooking the gardens of the existing houses on the high street, because it is quite a slope to that site. And if they're perched up high, they'll still peer over any kind of hedging that we put in there to protect them. But I don't know. I think we probably ought to have 11 abstains on this one, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. There's no other hands up. Any other comments from members? No. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it is a difficult one, but I don't think abstaining might not be quite the answer. I'm going to propose that we approve, because I think we are at that position where if we don't approve this, the alternative is that the outstanding permission is just available to the applicant, and the parish have agreed that the proposal that we're dealing with today does deliver some better conditions than they could see under the previous one. There are some positives. There are 25 bungalows that we often like to see in any development. It's quite a high proportion. It does often mean that we're looking at a age demographic, attracting older people who do want to stay in the village. So I'll leave it that. I'll see if I get a seconder so that we can go forward.
Thank you. Well, I've heard a proposal from Councillor Barrett. Do I have a seconder? Right. Then from the chair, I will second this proposal. because we do need to try and move forward on this. I would just like to ask the proposer whether she would agree to having a note put on any approval that they consider looking at a road crossing or making it safer at that point with either pedestrian crossing or island in the road, or whatever steps they feel that are reasonably that would achieve the same safety aspect. I know highways haven't commented, but we do know it is a busy road.
Yeah,
would you be happy?
An island would be quite useful, I think. A really good signal to vehicles to sort of slow down and take more care. I think that might well be good. But as officers have said, we do need agreement from the applicant. Yeah. So,
well, if it's minded to be approved, we could say that we're very concerned about that issue and add that note on. You'd be happy with that, and I'll check that the officers that could be added on, could it? Mr. Russell?
I've sent some wording to Robert Carmichael, which, Rob, do you want to read it out?
Right, lovely.
I don't know if it's strong enough, but see what you think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So what I've done is I've updated the recommendation so that it has the additional conditions from Mr. Edwards in the from the table papers, and the following informative notice follows: that the applicant is requested to communicate with the local highway authority in order to provide a pedestrian crossing.
Yep. Well, I'd be happy with that. I don't know whether the proposer is. Councillor Barrett?
Can you just repeat it, Robert, please?
Yes, Councillor, of course. So, sorry, I have to scroll all the way back.
Sorry.
So that's no problem at all. So the applicant is requested to communicate with the local highway authority in order to provide a pedestrian crossing.
Yeah. That sounds fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, members, any comments on the proposal? No hands up. Right, well, if that's the case, it's quite straightforward. It's been proposed by Councillor Barrett, seconded by myself, that we accept the officer's recommendation with the additional wording that was just read out regarding the pedestrian crossing. Although, oh no, we've got to go to electronic vote, haven't we? Nearly did it. Robert, would you like to take over at this point?
Thank you, Chair. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to today's agenda and click the plus sign in the top right hand corner. If you could then please click on the subsection that comes up for voting/attendance, and if you scroll down, the vote is now in progress shown in the light blue line.
Yeah. Right. I hit on that. I've voted, but it hasn't moved on to the next stage of the voting.
Okay, Chair, do you want me to take it?
Wait a minute, no, that's come up now as I speak to you. It's not coming up. Right, I've just confirmed it.
Okay, I'll just wait for it to come through, Chair. Right, thank you, Chair. That's all votes have come through. So the vote was 7 votes for, 2 against, and 2 abstentions. So the motion is carried.
Right, thank you very much for that. Thank you, members. Right, I think we're going to take a little comfort break now, if I'm correct. Yes, what is the time? 11:45. If we get back at 5 to 12, that gives us 10 minutes. Is that okay with members? Yes, I
That's
think
great.
Good.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, members of the public. We'll continue on with today's planning meeting, and we are now going to go forward with the Bildeston planning application, and the case officer is Jamie Weimar. If you'd like to take us forward on that, Jamie. Jasmine, sorry, not Jamie, Jasmine.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I'll just share my screen and just double check you can see everything as well. Oh, not that. Hang on. Right, can you all see my screen and my mouse as well?
It's on page 43 of your paperwork. Thank you. Yep, we can see all that.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'll be presenting a full planning application today at 7 Hill House, Newbury Road, Bildeston, which is an application made by the council for the retention of works to convert a former common room, which was previously used in conjunction with former sheltered housing, to a bungalow with proposed parking upgrades. Members are reminded that this presentation should be viewed in conjunction with the committee report and not in isolation. This is the site location plan, which goes around the whole of the Hill House building, which is in residential use, and the communal garden areas just around it as well. The proposed dwelling is shown on this right-hand side and is contained to a small single-storey central section of this main Hill House building. The remainder of the Hill House building was formerly sheltered housing, but has since been converted to 12 flats, which is comprised of 6 flats on the ground floor, 6 flats on the first floor. Here we have an aerial map with the site shown by the hatched area just here. Then we've got another aerial sort of photo overview. So the site is shown by the red square and is accessed south of Newbury Road, just along here. And as you can see, it's set within the sort of wider residential area within Bildeston. The Red Lion Public House and the High Street are located to the east, and you've got Bildeston Primary School located to the south here. So looking west towards the site, on the left-hand side of this image, you can see the site just here behind these sort of mature trees. And as you can see, it's this single-storey portion of the building. So in terms of constraints, the site is within the built-up area boundary, which is shown by the brown line running along here and sort of will carry around Bildeston, and is also within the Bildeston Conservation Area, which is shown by this purple sort of lines. The hatched area again shows where the site is, and again I'd reiterate that this shows the entire of Hill House and the communal areas, but the actual site itself is this central single-storey portion. Part of the established communal garden area to the western side of the site is within flood zones 2 and 3, which you can see just this little corner. However, the whole building itself, parking and specifically the common room to be converted are all within flood zone 1. The nearest listed buildings are located along the High Street, and a cluster of protected trees are also located to the east here, all of which again are outside of the site. So in terms of providing some background on why this is a sort of retention of, well, partially a retention of application, this is the emergency legislation put in for the COVID-19 pandemic to assist with emergency situations which included homelessness. Part 12A of this legislation gave permitted development rights to local authorities and health service bodies. As part of these permitted development rights and COVID-19 emergency, the council sought to find redundant and easily convertible buildings to help house vulnerable people within the district. However, as shown by condition B of the legislation, it originally stated that after the 31st of December 2020, all land that had been converted for the purposes of housing vulnerable people had to be restored to how it was sort of previously. Or planning permission would be required to retain the works carried out, which is what this application is effectively for. This deadline for removing works or applying to retain them has been moved to this year, I believe. I'm sure Ian could clarify that later for us. However, the council had already submitted an application to retain the works carried out and the change of use in order for the building to continue to function as a dwelling. So I've got some site photos here. These are showing the elevations and the works that have been done. So as you can see, the site is in the central portion, shown in the photo here and here. There's landscape into the frontage with mature trees and a footpath, again, fronting the site, which sort of runs all the way along the residential areas. Here is the original floor plan for the common room, which had a communal area, laundry area, store, office, toilet and kitchen already installed. So we've then got the common room was then converted into a one-bedroom dwelling under the emergency permitted development rights. And this provides the floor plan, which is in accordance with nationally described space standards. So the dwelling has a bedroom, kitchen, dining room, store, wet room, cupboard and living room. There is also a store/heating cupboard, sort of separate from the dwelling, just to the back, which is accessed from the rear, which is to be used and will be accessible for maintenance purposes associated with the wider Hill House building and is not sort of in use in conjunction with this dwelling. We've then got the common room elevations. So this is the original common room elevations shown here. As you can see, it's got a very modest and simplistic appearance. Moving on, we've then got the proposed elevations for the dwelling, which has been converted. The red circles are just to show you basically the only external differences that have occurred in converting the common room to a dwelling. Which involved the partial blocking up of patio doors to just a sort of window and a panelled area, and then just changing the front door. So just to show you the parking provision to the front, so there are designated parking bays just along here to the frontage of the site along Newbury Road. And the footpath, again, just to point out, is sort of opposite the site and is running around these parking bays and sort of along the residential areas. So the existing parking provision and the layout comprises of 4 bays to the front of the site, including 2 disabled bays here. And the proposed parking upgrades to the existing bays have not yet been carried out, unlike the works to the existing building, but as part of retaining these works, they are to be upgraded, which includes basically creating a new bay and relocating the existing footpath just to the west over here. The recommendation is therefore to approve this full planning application for the reasons set out in the committee report. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Members, have you any questions for the case officer? No hands have gone up. It seemed reasonably straightforward. Thank you.
Chair, we've got Councillor Hinton.
Councillor, oh God, that's right. I can't say it again. So, I'm trying to find you. Right, Councillor Hinton, if you'd like to put your question.
Yeah, just a couple of quick points for the officer concerned. The report states that there is no planning history for this. When was it converted from sheltered accommodation to 6 flats? That's the first question.
That is not something I am entirely sure of. I know the existing building was built, I think, in the 1960s, and sometime sort of recently, I think, when they've reviewed council-owned land and, you know, obviously reviewing all of the housing needs that we have, that's sort of when that happened. But it's not strictly relevant to this application because this application is solely relating to that single central portion.
Well, I appreciate that, but if it's a conversion of use to 6 independent properties, then that's something that should have been in planning history. But as far as I agree with you, it's not relevant for this, but it's something that we've slipped up on somewhere, or enforcement or somebody has, in not keeping an eye on ourselves.
May I comment, Chair? Oh no, Mark.
Can I finish first?
Yes, let Councillor Hinton finish, and then I'll bring you both in.
And the other thing is, of course, that if it is now 6 independent dwellings, or 7 if we include the bit at the front, then doesn't it not meet does it fail to meet the county council's parking standards?
Right. Legal, did you want to go first?
Well, I think Mark may be about to say what I needed to say, so I'll let Mark go first, if I may.
Thank you, Mark. You're muted. Famous words.
I know. I was going to suggest that perhaps the change took place in a different iteration of use classes order. It may have been it took place 2, 5, 10 years. I don't know when it took place. It may not have needed planning permission. That was the point I was going to make.
Yes, and if I may, the same point. Sorry, I'm not visible, am I? Yes, there's the same point that I mean, a dwelling house is C3 unless unless the element of care is such that it's on a different use class. But if a management decision to change from flats for older people with some communal facility to what the housing officers call general needs housing, that would not ordinarily need planning permission in recent years unless there was a planning condition or a section 106 obligation required to the effect that it was for people of a certain age or a certain need. And if I think just because Jasmine, as it were, kicked the ball to me, and I'd better run with it on the temporary rights, the position, as I understand it, is the original temporary provision was until December 2020. It's been extended to 2021 with a further 12 months to remove operational development if it isn't given the permanent permission that's being applied for here.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's very clear now.
Mr. Chairman, if I've got one other small point where I was a little bit surprised when it looked that the applicant is Mid Suffolk District Council. Do they own this building then, or is it part of the Babergh housing stock?
Sorry, yeah, this did come up. I think the applicant has been written down as Mid Suffolk District Council, but I think it is effectively Babergh Mid Suffolk District Council rather than sort of identifying between the two.
No, you confused me there. Is it Babergh or is it Mid Suffolk?
Because it must be one or t'other, because we're separate entities when it comes to these sorts of things.
I think if I may, Chair, the point is that it's owned by one or other or both of the local authorities, and that's why it's come to committee. It's not a planning consideration. That's just why it's at committee.
Right.
It does lend the accuracy of the report.
It'd be interesting to know who owns it, but anyway. Councillor Hinton?
It does rather lend towards the accuracy of the report, so if we can have these sort of anomalies.
I will do some research, members, whilst you're discussing it. I'll do some research for you. Oh, Ian's come along as well.
Well, no, just going to say, yes, I think it'd be helpful if we looked at, I'm sure the officer can look at the planning application. I mean, it's obviously Bildeston is in Babergh District, so we're in the right committee. But the issue, I don't know, that you do sometimes get odd cross-boundary things in local government where one council owns something just across the boundary. I've come across that occasionally in my career. I don't know if this is such a case or if it is. That if like before the shared arrangements, it would have been a Babergh set of council homes, as it were, council older people's provision. So, but I'm sure you can be given some advice on that.
Bildeston is definitely in Suffolk, in Babergh. Sorry. Right, there's no other hands up. So, members. We'll move on.
Mr. Chairman, if I could come at, was there an answer on the parking provision?
Jasmine?
Yes, sorry, yes. So the parking provision that is being proposed under this is for one additional parking bay, which is in accordance with parking guidance because it is for a one-bedroom dwelling. We're not really looking at the wider parking provision along that area. It is a residential area, and highways have reviewed both the existing parking sort of provision for the main building as well as what is needed by this dwelling. They are satisfied that it does meet that criteria.
So there's one additional parking bay. That's fine. Thank you. No other questions or clarification? No. Right, we don't have a representative from the parish or an objector or a supporter or the applicant agent. I'll now see if the ward member is present and whether he wishes to speak. Councillor Robert Lindsay, are you with us?
Just checking the attendance, Chair. I don't believe Councillor Lindsay is with us this morning.
No. I'll just call him once more. Councillor Robert Lindsay, you have 5 minutes in which to address the committee if you're present. Which he isn't, so we'll move on. We're now going to debate, members. So who would like to start? Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is absolutely straightforward, isn't it? I don't particularly want to get involved in any nonsense about who owns it or what have you. The proposal is to provide accommodation to support vulnerable persons by providing additional shelter, and that is good enough for me, Mr. Chairman. So if we're in debate and there's nothing else to talk about, I'd like to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation straight away, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Well, there's 2 or 3 now. Councillor Osborne, you were first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I have great privilege of seconding Councillor Parker's proposal. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Right, is there any other debate wanted in this? No, no hands up, only Councillor Osborne, I think, is an old hand. So we'll move then. I'll ask Robert Carmichael Livio direct us to the voting procedure.
Thank you, Chair. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to today's agenda and the plus sign in the top right hand corner, apologies, Chair, and then go to the subsection on voting and attendance. The vote is now in progress and will be shown in the light blue line.
Right, I'll sort of scroll down, just bear with me. Right, I've got that. Hit that button. Now hit that square. Confirm. Confirm. Right, I've voted. I don't know if everybody else has.
Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and that is 11 votes for and is unanimous for the proposal.
Good. That's how we like it. Thank you very much. Right then, members, I think we've got to the end of the agenda for today. I'd like to thank you for your attendance and that. And we have our next meeting on the Wednesday, the 7th of April at 9:30. Okay,